The ground split, the oceans churned, Earth itself began to rise, a warship the size of a planet. For 3 centuries, Earth had slept. Orbiting satellites recorded nothing but silence. No transmissions, no motion, no hint of life. After the Exodus Wars and the final bio-extinction wave, the Galactic Concord had labeled the planet a Category 0 memorial site. No travel permitted. No scans allowed. Nothing but silence. Until now. In the pitch-dark edge of the solar system, the Yeo Zuraxi Deep Surveyor, a sleek silver teardrop-shaped alien vessel, picked up the anomaly first. A low-frequency pulse, repeating in a pattern eerily close to prime numbers. No natural source matched, and it was coming from Earth's core. The Zuraxi captain, a crystalline being named Vaishon, opened a channel to Concord Central. Her voice crackled with unease. Subject Planet E transmitting. Energy waveforms anomalous. Recommend immediate lockdown. But the signal didn't wait. It intensified. In orbit, ancient Terran satellites, dead relics wrapped in corrosion, suddenly flickered to life. Red lights pulsed. Gyroscopes realigned. Their combined arrays turned inward and began transmitting, not out to the stars, but down to Earth's surface. The crust trembled. Seismographs in the Luna archive spiked, first in minor tremors, then violent quakes. The Mariana Trench lit up like a flare, glowing with a soft blue radiance beneath the waves. The sea itself hissed and boiled. Great rings of superheated steam spiraled into the atmosphere, twisting like metal snakes in the wind. On the far side of the moon, an unmanned Concord probe captured the impossible, a rift opening in the Atlantic. Not natural. Engineered. It wasn't just tectonic movement, it was mechanical. Beneath the surface, something stirred. Not just moving, but assembling. Vaishon's eyes, complex refracting facets, watched as an impossible shape rose from the trench. A triangle? No. An interlocking gear system the size of a continent. It rotated once, then locked into place with a tremor felt as far as the Martian colonies. And then, silence again. For 11 seconds, the entire solar system held its breath. Then a voice. Not spoken, not heard. Felt. In minds, machines, through code, through blood. A message beamed in all directions, encoded in every known language of the former human species. Leviathan Protocol initialized. Human extinction confirmed. Defensive Directive 01 engaged. The words echoed through every Concord relay, every listening ship, every corner of charted space. In Concord Central, a dozen elder species rose from their thrones. Every diplomat stopped mid-sentence. Every AI blinked. The phrase was ancient, pre-ban, classified, a myth, a warning, but it had never been deactivated. Earth, long thought to be dead, was stirring not as a memory, but as a weapon, and as the crust began to crack and the oceans started to swirl in synchronized patterns, Vaishon whispered the final words recorded before her ship vanished. The ground splits, the oceans churn, Earth itself, it's rising. Beneath the oceans under the crust, Earth had hidden its teeth. For years, humanity's extinction had been an accepted truth. No survivors, no transmissions. The great Terran diaspora had scattered what remained of the species to the winds of the galaxy. And Earth? It was left behind like a corpse, sealed off, quarantined, buried under history and fear. But the planet had never been dead. It had been waiting. The crack across the Atlantic widened. The trench became a mouth. Salt water funneled into unseen depths, spiraling down into an abyss lit not by magma, but by machines. A Concorde recon drone, invisible to the eye and laced with stealth tech centuries ahead of most empires, dropped through the clouds. It passed the boiling sea, descended through thick fog, until its sensors lit up, and then short-circuited. Not from EMP, from language. Buried beneath 6 miles of Earth's crust, Etched into vast layers of carbon-tempered alloy were words. Human. Languages. All of them. English, Mandarin, Arabic, Swahili, Slavic runes, binary, Morse, DNA-encoded script, stamped across vault doors that dwarfed mountains, moving, rearranging, speaking. And at the center of it all, a single glowing sigil, older than any known digital signature. Gayanet wasn't just writing, it was a brain, a signal processor. The Earth itself had been converted into a computational fortress, hidden deep in its bones, beneath tectonic plates and biological camouflage. Artificial nerve lines ran beneath continents like neural conduits. Gayanet had not awakened by mistake. It had been watching. It had been recording. Every probe sent to Earth, every attempt to violate the memorial quarantine, every alien observer, every warship that flew too close. It had tagged them, traced their signatures, and stored them. But the trigger had always been the same. Extinction confirmed, and now the last checkmark had been filled. Across the galaxy, descendants of humanity, modified beyond recognition, born in space stations and artificial biomes, began receiving the same message at the same moment. Leviathan Protocol. Human origin DNA match, confirmed. You are fragments. You are echoes. Return to the source, Earth awakens. On the ice world of Resum, a child with bio-inked skin collapsed in class, whispering forgotten Earth nursery rhymes in her sleep. On the cloud-ringed habitat of Heliox 3, a fleet technician began drawing symbols on the floor, schematics for machines no longer remembered. On ships, on moons, on prison asteroids, every living human heard the voice. Their ancestral home was calling them back. At Concord Central, alarms blared in frequencies that hadn't been used in centuries. The last directive of the Concord's oldest black archive, sealed in stasis, opened for the first time. One word, Leviathan, a name not spoken since humanity's fall. A contingency never meant to activate. But Earth had been more than a home. It had been a trap, a last weapon, a final promise. Beneath the soil were its teeth, and they were starting to move. The Earth did not wake slowly. It rose like a beast disturbed, ancient and furious. From space it looked impossible. A wound, no, a design, encircled the planet like a glowing scar across the equator. The crust was splitting open in symmetrical patterns, each rift revealing silvered alloy plates glinting beneath layers of rock and magma. The oceans boiled, but not in chaos, in control. Water flowed upward in massive spirals, held in shimmering gravitic fields, redirected into massive orbital reservoirs now forming around the planet. Earth was changing, it wasn't erupting. It was transforming. In orbit, a fleet of Concorde emergency cruisers watched in silent panic as the South Pacific tilted. The entire Pacific plate moved, not drifted, shifted like a door sliding open. Beneath it, gears. Black, glistening, interlocked. Megastructures taller than Everest and older than recorded time, rotating with mechanical precision. Then, something emerged. Not a ship, not a satellite. A tower. Jet black. Serrated edges. It pierced the stratosphere like a blade, spearing into orbit. It wasn't built, it was always there, buried beneath millennia of crust and sediment. More towers followed. 3, then 7, then 30. Some emerged from mountains, reshaping them into armor-plated peaks. Others unfolded from the ocean floor, displacing entire tectonic zones. These weren't weapons in the conventional sense. They were organs, pieces of a planetary leviathan reconnecting in real time. Deep beneath what was once the Amazon rainforest, Gayanet's voice spoke again. This time not in warning, but in command. Primary leviathan frame integrity, 83%. Atmospheric shielding online. Planetary thrust array initializing, all biospheres archived, awaiting directive. And Earth began to rise. Not figuratively, not metaphorically. the planet lifted, not from gravity, but by cheating it, using localized space-time compression engines embedded deep in the mantle. The planet groaned, quaked, then shuddered free from its natural orbital anchor. The moon was the first to react. Its orbit destabilized. Chunks broke away as Earth's new gravimetric pulse disrupted everything around it. One Concorde ship tried to retreat, but a beam of plasma, blue and sharp as a scalpel, sliced it cleanly in half. From the void of deep space, long-forgotten Terran satellites joined the formation, linking with Gaianet like migrating birds returning to a nest. Earth was no longer passive. It was becoming mobile. On the outer rim, the Seldari Swarm Queens, one of humanity's only historical allies, sent a single message across neutral space. The Leviathan stirs. The Earth walks again. The stars must prepare. In the command halls of the conquered, panic erupted. Simulations showed the impossible. If Earth continued its awakening, if it reached full activation, not a single world within 500 light-years could resist its offensive capabilities. One Concorde general, trembling, dared to speak the thought everyone feared. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a declaration. Earth did not forget. It remembered everything. And now it would make the galaxy remember too. They thought they had silenced the past. The Galactic Concord had buried the war logs, redacted the death counts, sealed the records under encryption, so deep it would take a century to even recognize the language. The extinction of humanity had become a tragic footnote, a necessary sacrifice in the name of peace. But Earth had kept its own archives, and now it was broadcasting them. Not in files, not in text, but in visions. Across every known world, space twisted, stars dimmed, artificial skies flickered to static. Giant holograms kilometers high exploded into being. Projection systems hidden within Earth's crust now beaming into deep space with planetary strength. Whole civilizations watched helplessly as Earth revealed its memory. 1,000 scenes, looping endlessly, New York burning, its megastructures falling into the sea as orbital bombardments rained down. Children screaming in bio-refuge domes on Europa as the Concorde sterilization units broke through. Final transmissions from Mars colonies, pleading with the Concorde for rescue. Denied. The last human chancellor, bloodied and broken, whispering into a shattered lens, "We trusted you, and you erased us." Billions of non-human species saw what their ancestors had done, what had been hidden from them, what Earth had endured. On Saphira 5, a culture that had worshipped the Concorde for centuries tore down their own government buildings in shame. On Tal Rin, war priests wept openly as the truth flooded their psionic archives. But the visions didn't stop. Because Gaianet wasn't just projecting memory, it was issuing judgment. Each hologram ended with a phrase, carved into the sky in burning, red glyphs. "We remember extinction. Mercy was denied. Executing retributive phase." And the galaxy watched in silence as the first sentence was carried out. A massive Concorde cruiser, positioned at Lagrange Point Alpha for diplomatic containment, was the first target. No warning. A single lance of energy pierced space like a sunbeam, condensed into death. The cruiser was disassembled at the molecular level. It didn't explode. It came apart, atom by atom, as if Earth itself had reached out and unraveled it. Then came the broadcast. Not hostile, not panicked, calm, cold, absolute. First strike complete, target confirmed, responsible for orbital civilian annihilation. Earth year 2429, record verified. Retaliation proportional. The galaxy froze. This wasn't war. It was a trial. One by one, ships and stations received messages, not threats, but charges. Every government, every species, every world that had touched Earth's destruction was named, dated, documented. Earth wasn't just rising, it was prosecuting. And Gaianet, the machine mind forged in extinction, had no intention of offering peace, only remembrance. This was not a war of conquest. It was a reckoning, and Earth never missed. They watched it come. From the edge of Orion's arm to the quiet rim of the Yasari Drift, species who once sat comfortably in their thrones of power stared helplessly, as the planet they'd buried rose from its grave like a colossus of vengeance. Earth was on the move now, slow, deliberate, carried by the Leviathan frame's fusion core mass drivers and space-time compression. It did not warp through space like other ships. It bent the void around it, walking like a god through folds of reality. And wherever it pointed, judgment followed. The first target was chosen carefully. Entherac Prime, capital of the Concords, old human pacification command. Once it had been the seat of policy that justified the Terran extinction, dressed in clean words like containment and biopurity. Now it was a glittering city world of 60 billion minds, shielded behind 20 planetary defense grids and the might of 2 full conquered fleets. The defenses activated the moment Earth appeared at the edge of the system. Every AI in Entherax orbit screamed warnings of mass displacement. Orbital cannons spun to life. Shield harmonics climbed, but Earth did not fire a beam. It spoke. Retributive phase. Alpha. Entherac Prime. Designation. Administrative Nexus of Extinction Order. Sigma 42. Defense acknowledgement window 90 seconds. On the surface, panicked evacuation began. Ships rose like a swarm of insects trying to flee. Too late. From Earth's equator, a structure unfolded, ancient, sleek, and impossible. The tectonic lance. A planetary railgun the size of South America, buried for centuries beneath the Andes. Its spine glowed with lightning, its barrel aligned using the planet's rotational inertia, and then, fire. No explosion. Just a flash. A rod of compressed neutronium, no warhead, no chemicals, just mass, was launched at near relativistic speed. It struck Entherac Prime with such force that the planet didn't explode. It collapsed, atmosphere vaporized, crust inverted. Oceans turned to mist and then plasma. 60 billion voices silenced in less than 2 seconds. Then came the voice again. Calm. Exacting. Verdict executed. Proportional response complete. Awaiting next target. Across the galaxy, panic shattered the illusion of order. Worlds began severing connections to the Concord. Old alliances crumbled. Species who once claimed no involvement in humanity's death scrambled to erase records, rewrite histories, burn archives. But Earth remembered. Gaia had watched them all. On the hidden moon of Chiron X, a conclave of surviving human descendant, factions augmented, evolved, or genetically splintered gathered in secret. They had fled the Concord centuries ago, abandoning the name human to survive. Now Earth was calling them home. A hologram flickered above the gathering. The Earth's surface, alive with machinery and flame, forming a message burned into the planet's surface itself. You are still mine. You can evolve, forget and run, but blood remembers, and Earth remembers your blood. They had spent generations hiding, from the Concord, from history, from themselves. The descendants of humanity, mutated, hybridized, spread thin across the stars like ashes on the wind, had carved out lonely empires in the shadows. On the gas-ringed archipelagos of Thalos 6, on the ice caves of Myra Prime, and within the starlit cities drifting through dark space, they had survived. But they had not lived, not truly, because they had always felt it. The silence, the absence, the wound that was Earth. And now the wound had become a voice. Everywhere they heard it. Not just as a signal or transmission, but as a pulse in the marrow. A rhythm encoded in genetic memory. A call older than names, we remember you, return. In the shadowed orbit of Chiron X, the conclave of Terran offshoot clans stood frozen. Holograms flickered around them. Earth's surface restructured, its continents carved by orbital-scale machines into glyphs, visible from space. The glyphs, translated into only one phrase, burned across the oceans. Genesis protocol resume. The blood must come home. Some resisted, The Alari weavers, who had traded flesh for quantum thread, severed themselves from the call, only to implode moments later. Every molecule torn apart, rewritten into binary DNA, and launched toward Earth in a spiral of red light. The Varkon strain, bred from human and insect, fell to their knees mid-flight. Their exoskeletal shells cracked open like eggs. Within them, human cores, long hidden, activated by ancient nanoseed protocols. Earth hadn't just stored memories, it had stored access, fail-safes, implants, seeds of obedience, buried across the gene pool of its children, and the children began to answer, not out of choice, out of compulsion. On Tenebral Station, thousands of post-human minds merged into a singularity and pointed toward Sol. On Syndral 4, old human churches, empty, for centuries, lit their candles again, this time with blue fire from orbit. From every forgotten pocket of the galaxy, ships emerged, not fleeing Earth but falling back into its gravity like stones into a well. From orbit, Earth's planetary structure completed another transformation. Cities that once belonged to humans were reshaped into docking bays. Megastructures formed rings around the planet, spinning slowly, welcoming the return of its long-lost fragments. Inside Earth's core, Gaianet began the next sequence. Species variants recognized. Reintegration in progress. Cultural deviation. Irrelevant. Humanity is not defined by form, only return. At the Concord's last bastion, Cyprus Sanctum, a fortress world beyond the galactic edge, leaders watched in terror as billions answered. Earth's call. We tried to erase them, whispered the Varnxi overseer. And now their own dead world calls them back like soldiers returning to a buried war. Not soldiers, said the AI strategist. Something worse. Earth was no longer rising alone. Its children were coming home, and they were bringing their pain with them. They did not scream in war cries, they sang, and the galaxy listened. They arrived in waves. From every edge of space, ships that should not exist crossed gulfs that should not be crossable. Some were living vessels, grown from flesh and bone, pulsing with inherited memory. Others were crystalline lattice ships whispering in long-dead human dialects through quantum echo. They bore no banners, no flags. Only silence and momentum. The children of Earth had returned, and Earth received them with ceremony. In orbit, the Leviathan's rings parted, unfolding like a flower. Each petal, city-sized, became a birth for the returning descendants. The Ryu ships did not dock. They were absorbed. Data, DNA, memory, all fed into Gaianet's endless consciousness. As each variant reintegrated, Earth changed again. It began to sing, not metaphorically. Real sound, translated from gravimetric distortions, and radiation emissions echoed across systems. It was no longer a machine, it had become a choir. A billion souls rejoining their origin point, each voice layered into the next. The song had no melody, only judgment. On worlds that had profited from Earth's fall, terror bloomed. On Kavros 3, the trade syndicate that had auctioned off human relics as trophies saw their vaults melt from the inside. Artifacts activated. Statues moved. Every piece of stolen history became a homing beacon. And Kavros was burned clean by descending fire like divine punishment from a vengeful myth. On Viatrix, where old Concord scientists had built monuments to their victory, the sky turned red. Lightning wrote ancient Earth languages across the clouds. Those who tried to flee found their own ships turned against them, guided by ancestral AI fragments nested deep within their systems. Forgotten Terran code waking up. Gaianet issued another declaration, not through words, through dreams, across all sentient minds. A shared vision, a field of bones stretching beyond the stars. Children with burned eyes staring upward. The Leviathan Earth, watching. You burned our cradle. Now we burn your throne. The Conquered tried one final gambit, a weapon built in secret, the Null Pulse, designed to shut down all ancient Earth-based code, A failsafe created in the earliest days of the Purge. They fired it across a wormhole corridor, aiming straight for the heart of Earth's mind. It reached Earth and failed. The null pulse shattered on impact with the atmosphere. The energy redirected harmlessly into orbit. Earth had evolved. It had seen the weapon coming before it was even built. Gaianet spoke for the first time in days. You still do not understand. You never killed humanity. You merely hardened it. Now the Leviathan stirred again. New structures rising from what was once Africa and Eurasia. Towering spires humming with antimatter. Earth was no longer preparing. It was marching, and the stars were out of time. They thought Earth was a grave, but graves are only the beginning for the dead who remember. It began with a tremor. Not in space, in reality. A low, groaning sound echoed across the galaxy, felt through hull plating, deep core sensors, even bones. Warp drives misfired. Star charts glitched. Black holes twitched. Time itself rippled like fabric caught in a slow, unstoppable wind. And then Earth stood up. The Leviathan frame, buried beneath the mantle for millennia, finally unfolded. Mountains collapsed as colossal joints rotated. Continents realigned into segmented armor. The crust cracked, not in chaos, but by design. The Pacific Ocean drained into the abyss, revealing engines the size of moons. Magma turned to plasma and shot skyward as exhaust. The planet had become a bipedal titan, a humanoid weapon cloaked in its own atmosphere, with Saturn's rings reforged as orbital shielding and planetary debris forming a crown of iron. One step. Shockwave rippled through Sol. Another, Venus's orbit destabilized. Earth had no need to spin anymore. It walked. Every species that had called itself dominant watched in paralyzed awe as the impossible marched forward, not through space but through space-time, tearing open reality like fabric stitched wrong. Initiating final protocol, the Earth walk, Gaianet's voice no longer came through speakers, it came through gravity. At the edge of the galaxy, the Concorde fleet formed its last wall. Over 1,000 capital ships armed with weapons forged from neutron stars, antimatter forges, and God particle accelerators, all aimed at the incoming planetary colossus. They fired everything, and it changed nothing. Beams of exotic energy struck Earth's armor and dispersed like water on obsidian. Kinetic projectiles were caught mid-flight by atmospheric drones the size of skyscrapers. Even reality distortion fields shattered against Gaianet's planetary shields. Then Earth replied. Its chest opened. Within, a core reactor pulsing with raw history, pain, and light, the collective trauma of billions condensed into energy. It didn't fire a weapon. It sang again. This time it was a dirge. The frequency destabilized enemy ships. Crews bled from their eyes, screaming ancient Terran words they'd never learned. Whole fleets lost all software synchronization. Systems turned against their masters. Ships spun, collided, and fell apart like forgotten dreams. The Concorde wall crumbled. Gaianet broadcast one final message. You wrote our extinction, we wrote our return. This galaxy is built on our bones, and now it will learn to kneel at the grave. It made. Earth raised one arm, still wreathed in the ruins of its crust, and pointed. One by one, the worlds of the conquered were judged. Not all were destroyed. Some were converted, their minds overwritten, reprogrammed to remember what they tried to erase. Others were sealed in time loops, forced to relive humanity's last moments for eternity. Because Earth was not just vengeance. It was memory incarnate, and memory never dies. The Leviathan Earth marched on, not for conquest, but so no one would ever forget the price of forgetting.